The hand around Nia's wrist is hard enough to bruise. She jerks back, but the stranger's grip only tightens, and before she can shout, two men in dark suits are already there. One wrenches the stranger's arm behind his back. The other presses a gun flat against his jaw. "You don't touch her," he says. "You know the rule." The stranger goes pale. "I didn't know." "Now you do." Nia stumbles against her own front door, keys slipping from her fingers and clattering onto the pavement. Her heart is hammering so hard it hurts. Nobody is looking at her. Nobody is explaining anything. The men drag her attacker down the street like this is routine, like she's the only one who doesn't understand what just happened. She stands frozen until the silence settles back over the block. Then Mrs. O from the flower shop leans out her door, broom in hand. "You all right?" "Yeah, just some guy." It's a lie, and they both know it. Inside the bakery, she locks the door, throws the deadbolt, and leans her forehead against the glass for one shaky second. The shop is dark except for the display case lights, gold and quiet and normal, in a way that suddenly feels wrong. That's when she sees the envelope taped just below eye level. Official letterhead, Korean and English. A company name she's never seen before. Her hands are still shaking when she tears it open. The first line makes her blood run cold. "We have been protecting you since before you were born." If you want to know exactly who's been protecting one woman for her entire life, without her ever knowing it, stay through to the end. And hit like or subscribe now, because this story only gets more dangerous from here. Nia reads the line 3 times before it means anything at all. There's no signature, no further explanation, just a second sheet stapled behind it, a land reassignment notice. Her bakery's address printed at the top, and one name buried in the fine print under Authorized Representative, Daehyun. Her ex's name sits there like it's been waiting for her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She folds both pages in half, then in half again, and sets them on the counter like they might burn a hole through the wood if she holds them any longer. She doesn't sleep. Near 2 in the morning, she checks the street out of habit more than hope. And this time, a black car she's never noticed before is parked directly across from her shop. Engine idling, headlights off. Someone is sitting perfectly still behind the wheel, watching her window. She doesn't step back. If someone wants to watch her, she isn't going to give them the satisfaction of hiding from it. The window rolls down. A man's face catches the street lamp. Sharp jaw, dark eyes fixed on hers like the distance between them means nothing. "I've been waiting 15 years, he says, "to find out if you'd ever come back to Seoul." "Who are you?" "Minjun." Nothing else. No explanation for the letter, the 15 years, or the men who dragged a stranger down her street an hour ago. "Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone else." The window rises before she can argue. The car pulls away, and Nia stands there long after it's gone, her own reflection staring back at her, hollow-eyed and unconvinced by her own calm. She doesn't go back to bed. Instead, she sits at her laptop at the kitchen table, searching the company name from the reassignment notice until her eyes burn. The registration traces to an address that turns out to be a parking garage. The listed director's name returns no results at all, like a person who exists only on paper. Every thread she pulls just tightens into another knot, and by the time gray light starts creeping through the blinds, she's no closer to an answer than she was at midnight, only more certain that whoever built this paperwork wanted it to lead nowhere. She opens the bakery on time the next morning out of sheer stubbornness, refusing to let one sleepless night cost her the one part of her life that still feels entirely her own. The regulars come through in their usual rhythm, the elderly man who orders the same cardamom bun every day, 2 university students splitting a loaf of sourdough. None of them notice the man stationed across the street, arms crossed, watching the shop's entrance with the patient stillness of someone who's done this before. Nia notices. She notices every time the bell rings and her whole body goes rigid before she can stop it. By mid-afternoon, her wrist aches from kneading dough too hard, working out a tension she can't otherwise release, and when a delivery driver knocks louder than usual at the back entrance, She drops an entire tray of proofed rolls onto the floor before her mind catches up with the sound. She's on her knees, scraping ruined dough into the trash, when the bell rings again. "You're not going to tell your staff why there's a man standing outside all day," Minjun says from the doorway. "I don't have staff. It's just me." She looks up, flour dusted along her forearms, jaw tight. "I want my life back the way it was 3 days ago." He doesn't answer that right away, and something about his silence tells her he understands exactly what she's asking for and exactly why he can't give it to her. Across the city, Dae-hyun sits alone in his office, lights off except for the desk lamp, a stack of forged transfer documents fanned in front of him like a hand he's already lost. His knee bounces under the desk until his phone buzzes and his whole leg goes still. He doesn't answer it. Instead, he opens a drawer and pulls out a folded newspaper clipping, edges soft from handling, a photo of Nia 3 years ago, flour on her apron, laughing at something outside frame. He'd kept it. He doesn't examine why. His new partner calls twice that night. He lets both go to voicemail. When she finally reaches him near midnight, voice bright and rehearsed, asking about dinner reservations for her father's birthday, his responses come clipped and automatic. He doesn't remember the last time her voice didn't make his shoulders tighten first. He doesn't love her. He's never pretended to. What he owes her father is the only thing real between them, and the number keeps climbing no matter how many signatures he collects. He remembers, unwillingly, the year he and Nia opened separate ventures 3 blocks apart. Hers a modest counter with 4 stools, his a restaurant with a name too big for the debt behind it. Hers is still standing, his closed within 14 months, and he spent every year since trying to build something large enough that nobody would ask about the one that failed. He tells himself the land dispute is only business. He doesn't examine too closely why her name is the one that still makes his hands unsteady. Later that same day, once the shop finally quiets and the man across the street changes shifts with another just as silent, Minjun steps back through the door, sunlight now low and amber through the windows, catching the line of his jaw. "That letter," she says. "No greeting. We have been protecting you since before you were born." What does that mean? It means exactly what it says. He glances toward the alley's mouth, jaw tightening at something she can't see. 22 years ago, a rule was written. Anyone who touches you forfeits their life. No trial, no appeal. Since before I was born. The words come out disbelieving. He doesn't answer that one. His eyes go somewhere past her shoulder, distant. Nia turns to follow his gaze and finds nothing there. He's looking at something only in his own memory. She disappears into the back kitchen without another word and returns minutes later holding a photograph, edges yellowed, pulled from a box of her grandmother's things she hasn't opened since the funeral. "I found this last night," she says, "after you left." Minjun's whole face changes the second his eyes land on it. A much younger version of her grandmother standing in front of a shop front blocks from where they're standing now, flanked by Korean men in dark coats, all of them looking at the camera except one, whose eyes are fixed entirely on her grandmother instead. His jaw locks. "Where did you get this?" "My grandmother's things." "You recognize someone in it." He doesn't answer. He looks up at her instead, and for the first time, something in his composure cracks at the edges. "This rule," he says slowly, "wasn't mine to make." The building he takes her to an hour later doesn't look like anything from the street. A plain steel door, a narrow stairwell down into a corridor lit by humming fluorescent tubes. An older man steps forward to meet them at the bottom of the stairs, silver at his temples. So this is her. He studies her face with an intensity that makes her want to look away and refuses to let herself. "This is her," Minjun confirms. He leads them past a shorter hall lined with black and white photographs in unmarked frames. Men Nia doesn't recognize. Decades of faces stretching back further than she can guess. One frame near the end holds a photograph that stops her cold. The same shop front from her grandmother's picture, empty this time. A small brass plaque mounted beside the door that she can't read. "What is this place?" she asks. "A record," the lieutenant says, "of everyone this organization has ever failed to protect. We keep it so the mistake isn't repeated." He doesn't elaborate further, and something in his tone makes it clear he isn't going to. They continue into the main room, where a dozen men in dark suits rise to their feet at once, every one of them looking at her like she's someone they've been warned about their whole lives. 22 years ago, a rule was written, the older man says to Nia directly. Anyone who lays a hand on a woman from your bloodline forfeits their life. Somebody in this room needs to tell me why. Her voice cracks, just slightly. Not just recited at me. The lieutenant's mouth tightens. Your grandmother did something for this organization that most men in this room wouldn't have done for their own blood. That's as much as I'll give you today. That's nothing. It's more than you had an hour ago. The lieutenant's eyes sweep the room once, and a few of the younger men shift their weight, uncomfortable in a way that tells her they've never seen anyone speak to him like that. Your grandmother was not the only woman this organization has protected. She's the only one it's protected for this long, and the only one whose protector's own son ended up standing in this room, in front of her, breaking every instruction he was ever given. Min Jun's jaw tightens, but he doesn't deny it. She turns to him, waiting, but he only says, "I was ordered to watch. Never to approach." His voice drops. "I broke that rule 3 nights ago, the moment I rolled down my window." The room goes still. Nia becomes aware of her own pulse, the warmth radiating off his arm inches from hers on the edge of the table, neither of them closing the last few inches of distance. A phone buzzes, breaking it. The lieutenant answers, listens, expression sharpening into something urgent. "It's the Han filing," he says. "He's moved. Federal investigators, this morning. He's trying to name the syndicate before we can name him." One of the younger men at the table stands so fast his chair scrapes against the concrete floor. "That's not possible. We haven't even finished tracing the shell accounts." "He didn't wait for us to finish," the lieutenant says. "That's rather the point." Min Jun is already moving before the lieutenant finishes the sentence, pulling his phone out, voice dropping into the clipped, efficient register Nia is starting to recognize as his working mode. "Get everyone we have on the Han accounts into one room in 20 minutes. I want everything we can hand over before the evening news cycle, not after it." Nia asks to be taken back to the bakery instead of the penthouse, and Min Jun doesn't argue. She spends the next hour with her hands buried in dough, working through a batch of bread nobody ordered, needing the motion more than the product. Her grandmother taught her this, that some grief doesn't respond to talking, only to doing something with your hands until the ache moves somewhere more bearable. She thinks about the woman in the photograph, young and unafraid, standing beside men who would spend the next 2 decades protecting a granddaughter she'd never live to meet. She wonders what her grandmother would say about any of this, the rule, the debt, the man currently standing quiet guard by the front window, watching the street instead of her. She doesn't come up with an answer. She just keeps working the dough until her arms ache and the shop smells like something warm enough to almost drown out everything else. Dae-hyun sits across from a man he's avoided for 3 weeks, listening to Mr. Han explain, without raising his voice once, exactly what happens if the loan isn't settled by the end of the month. "I have a plan," Dae-hyun says. His voice cracks and he hates himself for it. "You've had 3. Han doesn't look up. "None of them have paid me back. This one works. I have documentation tying the property dispute to the Seoul syndicate. If I bring it to the federal office first, frame it as their interference, it redirects the investigation before it reaches us." Han finally looks up. "And the woman? She's not the target. She's collateral to the story, that's all." Han slides a revised repayment schedule across the desk, the numbers larger, the deadline sooner, and says nothing else. Dae-hyun doesn't speak again until he's alone in the elevator, palm flat against the cool steel wall, breathing until the door opens. Nia is still at the syndicate building when Min Jun gets the call. She watches his jaw tighten with each word. He filed already, he says. The federal office has the documents. What does that mean? It means he's trying to make us the crime before we can prove he committed one. He's already moving, calling instructions to 2 men near the door. Then he stops. Why didn't you tell me who he was to you before all this? You already knew his name. I didn't know what he meant to you. Something unguarded flickers before he shuts it down. I should have asked before I decided how much of this to handle without you. You don't get to decide anything without me. Not anymore. She says it fast, before she can talk herself out of it. That stops today. Her own phone rings before he can respond. Daehyun's name on the screen, a number she never deleted out of stubbornness more than sentiment. She answers against her better judgment, stepping away from Minjun toward the window. You need to stop whatever you think you're doing, Daehyun says, voice tight. You have no idea who you're involved with. I have a better idea than you think. Her hand curls around the phone. You tried to steal my bakery, Daehyun. My grandmother's memory. My life. Don't call me pretending you're the one in danger here. I never wanted it to go this far. You put your name on forged paperwork. It already went this far the moment you did that. Her voice doesn't shake. Whatever happens to you now, you did it to yourself. The line goes quiet except for his breathing, uneven, and for a moment she almost feels something close to pity before she remembers exactly why she shouldn't. She hangs up without waiting for him to say anything else, and when she turns back, Minjun is watching her with an expression she can't quite read. His phone buzzes again. He reads the screen, and whatever color was left in his face drains further. It's already gone through. The filing's public. 2 of his men arrive at the bakery within the hour, one posting himself at the front window, the other checking the back entrance's lock without asking permission. Nia watches them work with the same silent efficiency she saw in the penthouse, and something about the sight, armed strangers treating her shop like a position to be defended, makes the danger feel suddenly, physically real in a way the paperwork never did. Is this going to be my life now? She asks Minjun quietly. Men at my door, watching every customer who walks in. For a while, he doesn't dress it up. Until the council closes this. Yes. And if they don't close it, he doesn't answer that one. And the silence tells her more than any reassurance would have. 20 minutes later, the penthouse Nia hasn't yet learned to call anything but his has transformed into a command center. 3 men at a long table, laptops open, a wall screen scrolling through scanned documents faster than she can read them. Minjun moves between them without raising his voice once, pointing to a paragraph on one screen, redirecting a man toward another folder entirely. The shell companies trace back through 4 accounts. One of the men says, not looking up. 2 touch Han's name directly. If we hand this to the federal office before Daehyun's filing gets traction, it flips the entire narrative. Do it clean, Minjun says. Nothing that traces back to us beyond the documents themselves. Nia watches an operation unfold that she has no part in and no ability to stop, and something about her own uselessness in the room needles at her more than the danger does. I could help, she says. Every head turns toward her at once. Minjun crosses the space between them, voice low. You already have. Everything in that box from your grandmother, that's the half of this we didn't have an hour ago. That's not the same as doing something. It's exactly the same thing. His eyes hold hers. You've spent your whole life being told you're only a baker. You're not sitting this out because I think you're incapable. You're sitting this out because the fewer fingerprints on this, the safer you are when it's over. If you're this deep into the story, and you still don't know why one photograph has an entire syndicate on edge, drop a comment on what you think the rule really means. I read every one, and the answer is closer than you think. The story breaks by evening. Federal agents entering Daehyun's office, cameras catching him escorted out a side entrance, tie gone, collar open, saying nothing to reporters shouting his name. What they don't know yet, what only surfaces in the documents Minjun's people supplied hours before Daehyun's own filing reached a desk, is that the land transfer isn't isolated. It's one thread in a stolen identity operation running through 3 shell companies and half a dozen falsified deeds, all traceable to accounts with his signature on them. He's not arrested outright, not yet. But by the time the segment ends, his investor's name has already distanced itself in a released statement, and 3 floors below his old office, Dae-hyun sits on a stairwell with his face in his hands, alone, for the first time all day. His assistant finds him there 20 minutes later, phone in hand, hesitating in the doorway before she finally speaks. The board wants a statement by tonight. Tell them whatever they want to hear. They want it from you, not me. He doesn't move for a long moment, and when he finally looks up at her, whatever composure he's been performing for 3 weeks has entirely drained out of his face. I don't know what to tell them, he says quietly, and for the first time she's worked for him, it sounds true. His phone rings. Han's name on the screen. The arrangement's over, Han says. No greeting. My daughter won't be seeing you again. Neither will I. Wait. Give me a week. There's nothing left to fix. The line goes dead. In the dark, a memory surfaces uninvited. Nia laughing in a doorway years ago, flowers still on her sleeve, before either of them had anything left to lose. He locks his phone screen without deleting the photo he never should have kept and slides it back into his pocket. Nia watches the same footage from Min-jun's penthouse, close enough that her shoulder nearly brushes his arm, neither acknowledging the inch of space between them. On screen, Dae-hyun disappears into a car, head down, and something in her chest twists. Not grief, not quite triumph, something unnamed in between. Is this what winning is supposed to feel like? She says quietly. It rarely feels like anything. She looks at him. That rule. Did it mean you were never allowed to actually know me? Just protect me from a distance. Forever? Yes. He says it plainly, no softening. For 15 years, everything I knew about you came secondhand. A report on the bakery's opening, a note that you'd started dating someone, another note when it ended. I built an entire understanding of your life out of paperwork, and I told myself it was enough because it had to be. His jaw tightens. It wasn't. He doesn't answer in words. He turns to face her fully, and the space between them closes by inches. Neither of them remembers choosing to give up. His hand lifts, stopping just short of her jaw. Her phone rings, shattering the stillness. Her mother's name. I have to take this, she says. He steps back, jaw tight. Her mother's voice comes through fast and frightened. Baby, there were men here, at the restaurant, asking about some rule, about your grandmother, Nia, what is going on? Don't call the police. I'm coming home, tonight. 12 hours later, somewhere over the Pacific, Nia sits beside Min-jun in a cabin quiet except for the low hum of the engines, neither of them sleeping despite the hour. You don't have to come with me, she says. This is my family, my mess to walk into. It stopped being only yours the moment they showed up at your family's restaurant, asking about a rule you didn't even know existed a week ago. He doesn't look at her when he says it, eyes fixed somewhere on the dark window instead. Besides, I'd like to see where you're from, the parts that aren't in a photograph. It's not glamorous. Just a restaurant my dad's owned since before I was born, and a family that spent my whole life telling me baking wasn't a real career. They'll change their minds tonight. You sound very confident about that. I've watched grown men change their minds faster, for less reason. A small, tired smile crosses his face, gone almost as quickly as it appears. Family pride rarely survives contact with real fear. The restaurant looks smaller than Nia remembers, but the fear in the room isn't something memory can shrink. Her family sits clustered near the back, her mother's hands twisting a napkin to shreds. When Nia walks in with Min-jun a step behind her, the room goes still. This is him, her mother says, voice climbing. This is the man. I'm the reason nobody in this room gets hurt, Min-jun says, before she can finish. Anyone who threatens her answers to me, personally. Her father's mouth opens, then closes. The condescension Nia has spent her whole adult life absorbing from this family evaporates in real time, replaced by something closer to fear, and beneath that, something she's never seen directed at her before. Respect. Your grandmother knew something about all this, her father says. Didn't she? I think so, Nia says. I'm still finding out how much. Later, in a quiet corner of the restaurant, while the rest of the family clears the tables, her father catches her arm gently. Nothing like the grip that opened this whole night. I owe you an apology, he says, voice low. Years of them, actually. Every time I called what you built just a bakery in front of people, I was wrong. I think some part of me knew that even then. Then why say it? Because it was easier than admitting my daughter built something on her own that I never had the nerve to attempt myself. He looks older suddenly, tired in a way she's never seen on him. I'm not asking you to forgive that tonight. I just needed you to hear it. Her mother reaches across the table, hand hovering over Nia's without quite landing on it. An old habit of restraint neither of them has ever broken. She used to get letters, her mother says slowly, dragging the memory up from somewhere she stopped visiting years ago. No return address. Every few months, for as long as I can remember. She'd read them in the kitchen with the door closed, and never once told me who they were from. You never asked? I asked once. She told me some doors don't open easier for asking twice. Her mother's eyes flicked to Minjun, then back. I always assumed it was an old friend. I never imagined this. Nia's older sister, quiet until now, finally speaks from the end of the table. Do you feel safer, knowing all this? Nia considers the question longer than she expects to. I don't know yet, she admits. Right now I mostly feel like I've been living a life that was never entirely mine to understand. Like everyone had a piece of the story except me. Would you rather not know? No. The answer comes faster than she expects it to. I'd rather know and be angry than keep being protected by people who never thought I deserved the truth. A television near the bar plays a muted segment. Dae-hyun, outside a courthouse, no polish left. Admitting to decisions he says he can't undo. Nia watches only a moment before looking away. Her phone buzzes. A text from the lieutenant, forwarded through Minjun's number. Someone broke the rule, it reads. Years ago, the proof just surfaced. Later that night, alone in her childhood bedroom, while the rest of the house finally sleeps, Nia pulls the box of her grandmother's belongings onto the bed and goes through it properly for the first time since the funeral. Beneath the photograph, beneath a stack of recipe cards written in handwriting she'd know anywhere, she finds a small bundle of envelopes tied with kitchen string, edges soft with age, no return address. She unties the string with careful fingers and unfolds the first letter, written in Korean she can't read, except for one line near the bottom, written in English, like the sender wanted to be certain she'd understand at least this much. Tell her nothing. Let her build a life that owes no one anything. Nia sits with that line for a long time, tea going cold on the nightstand. Whoever wrote it clearly loved her grandmother enough to protect her from a distance for years. The same distance Minjun has kept from her, without her ever knowing his name. The pattern unsettles her more than any single fact in the letters themselves. History repeating in a shape she didn't choose and can't fully see yet. The balcony overlooks the city in full dark. Nia stands with her arms crossed against the cold, Minjun beside her. Earlier that evening they'd eaten in near silence, back at the penthouse. The war room laptops finally closed and stacked against the wall. Minjun cooked, which surprised her. Simple things. Rice and grilled fish. Nothing performed for her benefit. You didn't grow up like this, she'd said, gesturing at the room. The view. Did you? No. I grew up in a 2-room apartment behind a noodle shop my mother worked at. My father wasn't in most of that. He visited when it suited the organization, not when it suited us. Do you resent him for that? I used to. He'd looked at her directly. Then I found out what he actually gave up trying to protect the one person he let himself care about. Now I mostly just recognize the shape of it. Now, on the balcony, she says, "Is that the only reason? The rule? Is that the only reason you've stayed close all this time?" "No." He turns to face her fully. "The rule kept me away for 15 years. I watched you from across streets and through windows because I was ordered to. And because breaking it meant a consequence, I was raised to fear more than death." His hand lifts, fingers sliding into her hair. "Tonight isn't obedience. It's mine to choose." His phone buzzes once. He reads the message the lieutenant sent, now fully unpacked into a name, a date, a photograph. His hand stills. "The rule was written the year my father fell in love with your grandmother," he says quietly, "and broke every promise he'd made to keep his distance. It wasn't only protection, it was penance." Headlights sweep across the balcony floor. 3 sedans pull to the curb below in formation. His phone rings, the lieutenant, clipped and fast. "The council's calling an emergency session. Someone leaked the photograph before I could bury it. They want to know if history's going to cost this family its seat the same way." "Whatever happens downstairs," Minjun says, "I'm not walking away from you to make this easier for them." He's gone before she can answer. On the drive down, alone in the elevator, he stops at the small shrine kept on the ground floor of the building. A single photograph of his father in a plain frame, incense long since burned out in its holder. He doesn't light new incense. He just stands there a moment, studying a face that looks more like his own than he's ever comfortable admitting. "You never told me if it was worth it," he says quietly, to no one, to the photograph, to 15 years of silence. "I suppose I'm about to find out for both of us." The room he walks into is the same steel-doored building, every seat around the long table filled, fluorescent light harsher than she remembers from the doorway where she waits, close enough to hear. The eldest man doesn't stand. "You know why we're here. I know what you think you know. Your father sat where you're standing once. He told this council the same thing, that it was his choice to bear. We buried him with that cost still unpaid. He lets that sit in the fluorescent quiet. Do you know what it cost this family, watching him choose a woman over a seat at this table? Do you understand what almost came apart because of it? I understand enough to know I'm not him. Prove it. Then tell me what you want." A man Nia doesn't recognize, younger than the rest, speaks up from further down the council table. "Some of us think the rule should be retired altogether. It's outlived whatever purpose it once served. Some of us think it should be enforced exactly as written," another counters. "Older, harder. No exceptions. Not even for the boss's son." The eldest man raises a hand, and both voices fall silent. He studies Minjun a moment longer before he speaks again. "Your father broke this rule in secret, protected no one but himself, and left this family exposed the day he died. You didn't do that. You brought her into this room instead of hiding her from it. You handed us the Han filing before it could bury us." His eyes move to the doorway, to her. She's standing there because she chose to be. That's the difference your father never had the chance to make. The room begins to rise. The matter closed as plainly as it opened. The younger man who'd spoken earlier gives Minjun a small, approving nod on his way past. The older, harder voice from before says nothing at all, but doesn't argue either, which in a room like this one, Nia is beginning to understand, counts as its own kind of concession. Nia steps into the doorway. "What about Daehyun? He says he still has proof." "He sent that message to the wrong household, believing it would frighten men who've survived worse," the old man says, unbothered. "We traced that number before his phone finished dialing. Whatever he thinks he has, he won't get the chance to use it." Relief moves through her chest so fast it nearly buckles her knees. Minjun crosses the room to her, and this time when his hand finds her jaw, nothing interrupts them. He tips her face up, and when he finally closes the distance, it isn't rushed, just certain. The kind of certainty that took 15 years and one broken rule to earn. The lieutenant waits by the door as the room empties, watching them a moment before he speaks. "Your father would have wanted this," he says quietly, to Minjun alone. "Not the rule, this." He just never had a table willing to let him keep both. Minjun doesn't answer right away. He simply nods, once, and the lieutenant lets the silence stand as its own kind of answer. By morning, the bakery smells like cardamom and fresh bread the way it always has, sunlight cutting gold across the counters. Minjun stands beside Nia while she works, his hand resting over hers, still, warm, present in a way 15 years of distance never allowed. Mrs. O stops in for her usual order and pauses in the doorway, glancing between them with open curiosity. "New assistant?" she asks, nodding at Minjun. "Something like that," Nia says, and doesn't elaborate, and for the first time in days, the lie feels less like a lie and more like a choice she gets to make about her own life. Outside, the man who used to stand watch across the street is gone, and no one has replaced him. Nia notices the absence before she notices anything else that morning. The ordinary rhythm of the block finally allowed to just be ordinary again. Delivery trucks and open shutters and nothing underneath any of it waiting to go wrong. Across the city, Dae-hyun sits in a small, undecorated room, a federal agent sliding a folder across the table, the last of his leverage already accounted for. For the first time since this began, he stops reaching for something that was never going to save him. In the syndicate's underground office, the lieutenant closes a thin file on the rule that started with one woman's grandmother, sets it in a drawer, and locks it. Some things, he decides, are finally allowed to stay finished. Down the hall, in the room lined with unmarked photographs, someone has already added a new frame. This one holding a copy of the same shopfront picture Nia found in her grandmother's things, except now it has a caption typed beneath it, brief and unadorned, "The debt that outlived the ones who owed it." Nia looks up from the dough in her hands and finds Minjun already watching her, no distance left between them for the syndicate or the past to claim. Whatever came before this morning, it's finished. What's left is simply theirs. If this story gave you what you needed today, hit like and subscribe. There are more stories just like it waiting for you.